Caravans arrived laden with gold and spices, and the sound of coins changing hands echoed through the markets. The banquets were endless. Tables covered with delicacies stretched across the palaces of the powerful, where wine flowed without limit, and music rose between alabaster columns. In every corner of the city, abundance filled the air. For many, life in Sodom meant a carefree existence, without lack, without worry, without restraint. But beyond the towering walls, beneath the gleaming surface, something dark was growing unchecked. Wealth fed arrogance, and abundance smothered compassion. Strength triumphed over justice, and cruelty had become the norm. Strangers were met with disdain. The poor were stripped of what little they had without remorse. And corruption flowed through the streets like an unstoppable river. There was no law greater than the will of the powerful. There was no restraint for the most unbridled desires. Each day brought new excesses, and each night ended with acts no one dared to question. In Sodom, pleasure knew no bounds, and punishment seemed like a forgotten idea. But the heavens were not silent. Something unseen was moving over the city, something none of its inhabitants could have imagined. The gates of Sodom opened at dawn, and with the light of day came the roar of a city that never slept. Merchants hurried to set up their stalls. Judges took their seats in the courts. Musicians tuned their instruments, and banquet halls prepared for yet another celebration. Every street was alive with movement. Every square echoed with voices of joy. But beneath that appearance of normalcy, corruption had taken root so deeply that no one even noticed it anymore. Justice was sold to the highest bidder. Compassion was seen as foolishness, and truth had become a nuisance few were willing to tolerate. There were no limits to ambition, no restraint on pleasure. The strong crushed the weak without consequence, and greed drove every decision. The elders spoke of a God who once ruled over the earth, but their words were met with laughter. It was said that in ancient times, there were laws that brought balance, and that men once walked under the gaze of the Most High. But now, those stories sounded absurd, distant, completely disconnected from the reality of a city governed by its own rules. Temples once built with devotion lay in ruins, or had been turned into banquet halls. Prayers had become forgotten echoes, and what was once sacred was now trampled without remorse. Morality carried no weight, conscience was an obstacle, and reverence for the divine had vanished. The nights unfolded with the same wild abandon that ended each day. In Sodom, every desire was fulfilled. Every impulse fed, every boundary erased. The city laughed in arrogance, never imagining that in heaven, judgment was already on its way. Night stretched over Sodom like a cloak of restless shadows. The streets, lit by flickering torches, bore witness to drunken laughter and whispers lost between stone walls.